it's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. And so it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Hello and welcome to a Thursday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination and consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern time. A Thursday morning as conference tournament week around college basketball continues to roll on. 3 tickets to the big dance punched and claimed last night. We will recap everything we saw from a Wednesday. And on this Thursday in the ACC, Big 12, and Big East, those top seeds who have had a few days off at the end of the regular season now enter the fold in a month defined by madness. We'll go around the NBA with a potential NBA Finals preview last night and a statement made on the road in Boston for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and as the official league year around the NFL began yesterday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Plenty of moves to discuss as well. All of that, DRS, over these 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, it should be a good show. And yesterday, going on Moneyline, I was able to be by myself there and absolutely cap every single game on the card. Got through them all, had a blast doing that. And the reason I bring that up is today, you want volume, you got it. You want quality, you got it. This is one of the best college basketball days of the season today on a Thursday, where they get started right away. I think the earliest game, let me just do, is it 11:30 today, or is it actually 11 a.m.?
11.
Bowling Green and Akron starts it off today and goes all the way through. The latest game that's due to tip tonight, 11:30 p.m. Eastern. It feels like the dance is already here. If you don't enjoy these type of days here on the SportsGrid Network, I don't know what you're going to do with yourself. I don't know.
More than 14 consecutive hours of college hoops. The MAC tournament underway. John Gross in Akron, the number 1 seed, as Donnie just laid out. I am pretty sure that is every single conference except for the Ivy League that only sends 4 teams to its conference tournament. That starts later this weekend. So basically everybody is trying to define that champion and the automatic bid that league will send to the NCAA tournament. But we start with news out of the National Football League. 4 p.m. Eastern Time yesterday, the official start to the 2025 league year around the NFL. As we shared, every maneuver, every move that you saw, whether a free agent signing or a blockbuster trade, became official as of yesterday. Even some parting of ways. When it became official, the New York Jets released Aaron Rodgers. And Donnie, maybe more importantly, as we were kind of predicting and waiting for, if the Rams were unable to trade Cooper Kupp, they said they would release him. That officially happened yesterday afternoon as well.
Yeah, big moves, anticipated moves as well. The interesting one is not Aaron Rodgers getting released. We all knew that was happening. The Jets told us as much months back, it feels like. But also Cooper Kupp. A player of that ilk in the NFL becomes available and not a single taker on the market, which means they couldn't get a 6th or even a 7th round pick for Cooper Kupp because the amount of money he makes. But there must be a lot of stuff going on with Cooper Kupp's medical profile that we just don't know about, where the Rams are like, yeah, we're good, and we'll just cut the guy. So we'll see what plans out for Cooper Kupp. One of those guys 2 or 3 years ago, indispensable in your offense, now seems like he's just an afterthought.
One of the great wide receiver seasons we have ever seen, helping lead Los Angeles to a Super Bowl in which Cooper Kupp won Super Bowl MVP way back in Super Bowl 56. But injuries have marred really the last 2 to 3 seasons, was pretty much healthy for a majority of 2024. Just not the guy that he once was. 32 years old for Cooper Kupp. He has spent the entirety of his career in L.A. But on a discount, DRS, that vet minimum perhaps, he should be able to provide a spark for some offense around the NFL. The quarterback carousel continues to spin. Aaron Rodgers, a big name, as is Russell Wilson. Wilson plans to meet with the Browns and the Giants to maybe find a new home now in free agency.
Giants does make a little bit of sense. They're going nowhere. He'll be a good locker room guy. I understand that. The Cleveland Browns, I don't know what they're trying to do at this point. It's interesting how far this fall has been for Russell Wilson. When last year, probably the perfect spot for him was Pittsburgh. It looked like it was okay to start and just crashed by the end of the season.
Sometimes you reach the peak and then everything is a downhill fall after that. Let's get to the NBA. Our finals preview, as the odds makers have seen it for the last few months around the association, at the home of the reigning champs, inside TD Garden. But Oklahoma City, as Donnie predicted, here to make a statement and prove a point. We are a true championship contender. 118-112, the victory for Oklahoma City on the road inside TD Garden. The Thunder win outright as a 2.5-point underdog, led by 34 points from the MVP frontrunner and odds-on favorite in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Nobody's looking at the Celtics this morning, Ben, and saying, like, that's terrible. I don't think they can win a championship. But I'm telling you right now, people would have looked at the Thunder if they lost that game like, yep, that's about what we expected. When the Celtics really care, they can beat the Thunder. That's how important that game was. This was a tie game going into the fourth quarter in Boston, which the Thunder won that basketball game as a slight underdog. Thought the Thunder would win, and they did.
Yes, they certainly did, DRS. And a great game from Chet Holmgren as well, providing that spark for OKC. Third game for the Thunder as an underdog this year. That's it. They have won outright twice. And now we have co-favorites to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy this season. Boston plus 185. OKC plus 185 as well. 3 tickets, punch to the big dance around the men's NCAA tournament. We start in the Southland Conference. McNeese gets a big victory in that matchup for a second consecutive year. Will Wade and his Cowboys are going dancing. They were a 13.5-point favorite against Lamar. A big victory for those Pokes. Montana pulls off the upset out in Big Sky Country, winning outright over Northern Colorado in a high-scoring game, 91-83. The Grizz as a 2.5-point underdog outright, and in the Patriot League in their own home arena, the American Eagles are flying to the big dance for the first time in more than a decade. First trip for AU to the NCAA tournament since 2014.
I mean, the Patriot League, a school called American, they're named the Eagles, punching their ticket into the tournament. It doesn't get any better than that. And more tickets will be punched Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. I can't wait to see this play out. It's fun to see these teams punch their ticket to see what they can do and be that Cinderella upset spoiler come March Madness, which we're only a few days away from.
We'll talk more about Will Wade later on, but one of the best coaches in college basketball. A trade yesterday between three teams in the NFL. You don't often see it like that. Dallas adds Kyer Elam and Kenneth Murray Jr. in a three-team trade that involved the Buffalo Bills and the Tennessee Titans as well. A lot of draft assets traded as well in that three-team deal.
Yeah, decent. Teams are going to look for some cornerback help. You got that here, an extra linebacker. You got that there. It doesn't really move the needle for me, but teams just trying to set that roster up as free agency moves along.
I'm now learning it was two separate trades for the Dallas Cowboys, but still involving three
caught me off
teams.
guard.
Kyer Elam, sorry about that. Kyer Elam, as it was shared yesterday, former first-round pick. Not the greatest designation when you're 3-4 years into your NFL career. Bobby Witt Jr., scary moment yesterday in spring training for the Royals. He was hit by a pitch on his left forearm. Everybody feared the worst. MRI revealing, or the x-rays revealing, it was just negative, not necessarily the worst case scenario. Bobby Witt Jr. should avoid any long-term absence DRS for KC.
And the people of the pass squatch out there going, whoo, what a sigh of relief. That guy needs to protect me all season long. Yeah, nobody needs Bobby Witt Jr., about to be the MVP of Major League Baseball, down already before the season starts.
That would have been terrible. More on the early line comes your way up next.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. He is Donnie. I am Ben. Hand up. My apologies. Sometimes, DRS, we all make mistakes. There was a headline in our 7 and 7 headlines that I was just too infatuated with Will Wade and what he had done at McNeese that I skipped over. DeMarcus Lawrence, spending all 11 of his seasons previously in Dallas with the Cowboys, a 4-time Pro Bowler, but only playing 4 games in 2024, has now signed in Seattle. A 3-year deal up to $42 million. Great work by the guys behind the scenes to make sure that you see that there. And the great graphic work is actually appreciated.
Yeah, and I guess DeMarcus Lawrence was part of that 3-team trade that we missed out on. So he goes up to Seattle here and see if they can rebuild that defensive line at that point. Solid football player, and you're saying, like, what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys? Well, when you have to pay your other outside linebacker like $75 million a year, you really can't sign too many people, and you're going to lose some guys.
Yeah, you certainly are. Only 4 games for Lawrence in 2024. Busy day for the Dallas Cowboys. Not a 3-team trade, but 2 trades with 2 separate teams. All right, well, 7-7 is a thing of the past now. Let's talk about other news around the NFL as the official league year began yesterday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Donnie, still in the quarterback carousel, a lot to be figured out. Teams that still need to address that QB conversation and question this offseason, and a couple of very big names, at least still by brand name power, available on the open market. Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. Let's start with Russell Wilson, who is planning on meeting with both the Cleveland Browns and the New York Giants. Donnie, I'll ask you the question like this. Do you believe Russ ends up in either of these 2 franchises?
Yeah, well, where else is he going to go, to be honest? Like, Russell Wilson doesn't appear to me, it's like, okay, I'm at the stage of my career, which he should be. I'm just going to be a backup quarterback. I can play another 6-7 years. I'll be a good locker room guy and move forward. He probably still thinks he can start, and most people that have achieved the highest level of success in their sport are always going to think they can achieve another high level here by being a starter. If you look at the Cleveland Browns, there's probably a starting job up in the air, which would be enticing. If you look at the New York Giants, there's probably a starting level job that would be enticing to him. Why? Because it gives you a chance to start. There's not many opportunities out there in the NFL for Russell Wilson to actually go into training camp and have a legitimate chance to start. Now, starting is one thing, and performing well in the field is another. The Giants are a mess on offense, which includes that offensive line. Not a great look. The Cleveland Browns playing one of the toughest divisions in football in a cold weather city where sometimes in Cleveland, it's tough to throw the football. And oh yeah, you ever see the windy conditions late October, November, December in the Meadowlands? Not a great look for Russell Wilson, but if there's starting opportunities out there, he's going to take it. I don't care if he signs with the Giants or Cleveland. It doesn't move the radar. It doesn't move anything in my direction for, solid move by that franchise. Nothing gets me with Russ anymore.
Yeah, I agree, DRS. The production for Russell Wilson, even if at times the stats look okay, this is not the same quarterback, of course, that we saw for a decade in the Pacific Northwest. And sometimes that happens. But I think it is really fascinating when you look at the quarterback teams out there. And a couple of these teams that we identified early in the offseason that had to address that quarterback conversation. We highlighted 7. Really, when you think about teams that could address it through the NFL draft, like the Titans and the Browns at the top of the board, 1 and 2, maybe even the New York Giants, who select 3rd overall. The Raiders have already made their deal for Geno Smith. The Seahawks were not a team initially we thought had to make a quarterback change. They do. They bring in Sam Darnold. The Steelers certainly in that fold. The Giants remain right there. It is really interesting, Donnie, to see where these pieces are going to go. And I think the Giants are kind of waiting with bated breath to see what the Cleveland Browns end up doing. If the Browns bring in Russ, and the Browns have already acquired Kenny Pickett, to me that is a clear indication they are not in love with a quarterback at the top of the market. They believe Cam Ward is going 1st overall. Whoever ends up making that selection, and Shedeur Sanders could be on a slide. Does that mean the Giants would be there welcoming Shedeur to New York with the 3rd overall pick? Would he move past that? I think that is the really fascinating thing to follow, with the quarterback still on the open market and much to be determined this offseason.
And also, like, are these quarterbacks going to agree to like a contract that goes, all right, we'll sign you now, but we don't have any guarantees for you until after the draft, because if we decide to get a quarterback, there's no need to have Aaron Rodgers on the New York Giants if you draft Shedeur Sanders. You're just going to put Shedeur in there. And the same thing for the Cleveland Browns. Why would you get Kenny Pickett and Russell Wilson, have Deshaun Watson on the roster, and then get, let's just say, Shedeur Sanders? That's what makes it interesting. And I don't think either one of these teams particularly will be in a hurry. No, as a quarterback of your ilk of Russell Wilson, hey, I'd like to know what I'm doing before May, let's just say at this point. And the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers are in a mode of we're going to draft our quarterback this year. So the veteran, probably, let's just say Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers, makes more sense than Russell Wilson going to, let's just say, Cleveland or New York. Because the point of having Russ is that your bridge quarterback where you draft a guy in the top 3 and like, hey, sit behind Russ. I don't agree with that one bit at all. You might as well let the quarterback go out there and get learned by baptism by fire. So there's some interesting options for these quarterbacks, but I don't know how interested these teams are right now of hurrying up and making Russell Wilson a part of the team.
And I think you're spot on, DRS. He does not move the needle anymore. If he goes to the Giants, you might have a win total of 5.5. Does that preseason win total jump to 6.5? No. Does he lead them to 7 wins? Still probably not. And the question, of course, for the G-men, are Joe Shane and Brian Daboll afforded the opportunity to wait it out a year? The answer to that is probably a resounding no. League year became official yesterday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so some moves becoming official as well. As we well knew, the release of Aaron Rodgers by the New York Jets and the Rams releasing Cooper Kupp because no trade was available. That's the intriguing thing, DRS. They couldn't find a market in a trade, even getting a 6th or 7th round pick in return for Kupp on his current contract. But now that he is an open market free agent and you can sign him at a discount, I do believe Cooper Kupp still is a desirable option.
Let's see, too, because, you know, when you take a look at intriguing options, if you tell me I'm getting the real Cooper Kupp, I mean, it is going to be sensational. But how about a team like Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins that go, hey, look, I've been around Cooper Kupp from that Sean McVay tree. We can slide you right into 2 dominant wide receivers, get you at a nice discount price, something they tried with Odell Beckham and multiple receivers that just haven't worked out in that slot for the Miami Dolphins. There are options. We'll see where he goes.
Yeah, we will. And there are a couple of teams that could use somebody, maybe not as a number 1 wideout, but just to bolster that wide receiver room. The other maneuvers around the NFL, up next.
It's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. So it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
DRS, right before the break, we were talking about the Rams' release of Cooper Kupp. 32 years old, has spent the entirety of his NFL career out of Eastern Washington in Los Angeles. Had one of the great wide receiver seasons we have ever seen back in 2021. A Triple Crown Cooper Kupp season, leading the NFL in receptions, receiving yards, flirting with Calvin Johnson's record, and receiving touchdowns. He was also Super Bowl MVP in the Rams' victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. But the last few years have been marred by injury and a drop in production. When you look at Cooper Kupp as maybe one of the 5 or 10 best wide receivers in the NFL, maybe that narrative has passed him by, but I still believe he can be productive. You referenced a couple of teams where you think Cooper Kupp would make some sense. Who are those clubs around the NFL?
Yeah, for me, Miami probably makes the most sense at that point, just because you have that connect of, Sean McVay offense, Sean McVay disciple. Let's just see what he can do. And also no pressure added. You have Tyreek Hill on one side, you have Waddle on the other. He can fill in and be like, you know what? Maybe I'm not the wide receiver that I used to be, but I used to also see double teams repeatedly. I'm getting no double teams at this point right now. I'm probably getting your third best corner because you have to worry about some other wide receivers on the opposite side. Of course, the Dallas Cowboys are always going to pop up into that picture. But the question for me is, like, we watch this, and so many times on the Pro Football Today desk where we would watch those primetime games, we'd be like, I don't get it. Like, yes, we understand Puka Nacua is awesome, but there's one thing where I'm getting 8 targets a game, 9 targets a game, and just can't connect. I'm only catching 3 or 4 passes. There were some times where Cooper Kupp wasn't even get targeted during an entire football game in a close game. That's what I worry about the most, because it is a buyer beware where typically when a top flight wide receiver like a DK Metcalf hits the market, there is a bidding war. There are teams making phone calls. Please, what's it going to take to get this guy? And Cooper Kupp's like, hey, you know what? He's up for trade, and nobody came calling. And the Rams like, guess we have to eat some dead money on the salary cap and just let him be a free agent at this point, because other teams talk, general managers talk. There's a reason why Cooper Kupp wasn't getting the ball. It wasn't because Matthew Stafford didn't like Cooper Kupp anymore, or he said something about Matthew Stafford's wife. That wasn't it. He just wasn't getting targeted because either A, he's lost 2 full steps, or he's just injured to the point where I'm lucky to be out here playing. Let's just keep that quiet.
And Donnie, it does make sense that the Rams had to part ways with Cooper Kupp and were unable to trade him. When you are trying to trade a guy, that team that you are trading for has to send you draft capital, something of the sort, in exchange for Kupp, and then take on whatever money is still outstanding on that current contract. When the Rams have to eat the dead cap hit, release him, you can now sign Cooper Kupp as a free agent for a discounted veteran minimum, whatever that turns out to be. The favorite to land Cooper Kupp, thanks to our Canadian friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook, the Denver Broncos at plus 410. The Broncos active yesterday, signing Evan Ingram, who was released by the Jags, the 2-time Pro Bowl tight end, a 2-year, $23 million deal. We'll talk, and we have already, about DeMarcus Lawrence, a 3-year, up to $42 million deal in the Pacific Northwest with Seattle. Mike Williams finds his way back to L.A. after the Chargers released him an offseason ago. Dalvin Tomlinson makes his way to Arizona. Darius Slay on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then, Donnie, maybe that second name worth a conversation as well. Mac Jones. Yes, Mac Jones going to the Kyle Shanahan School of Reserve Quarterback Revival, and will provide that veteran guidance, perhaps, in the quarterback room for Brock Purdy. 2-year, $7 million deal.
You take a look at some of the teams that are the most talented in the NFL, and typically you would think of the San Francisco 49ers and that ilk, even the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. And you notice, like, well, what's going on in free agency? Maybe it's not this year, but could be next year. Like talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, re-up time for, Quinyon Mitchell on the outside, or a Cooper DeJean, or Jalen Carter is going to absolutely ring cash registers, is why the Eagles say we're talented. We just can't spend money crazy because of the future. The reason I bring that up is look at the 49ers, who have had one of the most talented rosters in the NFL over the past 2 to 3 seasons. They are quiet and players are leaving. Why? Because they can't figure out what they have to pay their quarterback here. Same thing with the Dallas Cowboys. Micah Parsons is up on deck. Usually you want these things taken care of before you get to free agency, but now they're in that limbo period. You see them signing Mac Jones there, a veteran quarterback, just in case things don't go in their direction. But I'll tell you what's interesting. Most teams that really want their quarterback, the only prolonged one that we probably saw was Lamar Jackson, where these two teams couldn't get on the same page and basically said, hurry up, somebody sign. Jalen Hurts signs, they go, good. We'll just give him a little bit more than Jalen Hurts and we'll figure it out. Brock Purdy's in that anomaly where I think people will be like, okay, you got $30 million. That makes sense. oh, we got $60 million. That makes sense, which I think the 49ers and that agency that are going back and forth, they can't find that middle ground. You know who that hurts? The team itself. You can't sign anybody until you know that quarterback's number.
It's a good point, DRS. It is very, very sound. More on the early line comes your way up next.
It's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. So it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
A huge matchup last night in the NBA, a part of a 9-game slate in the association, but the biggest game by far in Beantown, in the home of the reigning NBA champs and the NBA title favorites all year long. The Boston Celtics hosting the Oklahoma City Thunder, DRS, in a game that everybody, including the odds makers, project to be that NBA Finals matchup come early June. And we talked about this game, not just from a breakdown perspective or the marquee matchup on paper, but the statement that would be made by either side. If the Celtics hold serve on their home floor, all right, Boston's still untouchable at the top of that odds board and the NBA. If OKC goes into TD Garden, albeit a regular season game, the Thunder are making things known they are not to be taken lightly. And that's exactly what Oklahoma City did last night. As a 2.5-point road dog inside TD Garden, 118-112 the victory for the Thunder. They went outright as that 2.5-point underdog. A total of 229 barely pushes to the over. And in games like this, Donnie, who needs to step up most? Your MVP frontrunner, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, game-high 34 points to pace OKC.
Yeah, it was a nice night for OKC. And also, sometimes you look at that line, like opening up yesterday at the FanDuel Sportsbook, minus 4.5 points. By game time, it's down to 2.5. And I told you, I liked the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the game tips off like, boy, I mean, I know I like the Thunder, but you're telling me the Celtics at home minus 2.5 points, which means the Thunder probably have to win this game if they want to cover that game. And you see how close it was all the way through, where you're waiting for Boston to explode. You're waiting for the bench to get involved, like Sam Hauser just to launch 9 triples into the night, or Peyton Pritchard. It didn't happen. because OKC plays pretty good defense. And there's no excuses where, well, Porzingis wasn't in the lineup there for the Celtics. Nonsense here. We've seen the Celtics win with a B-grade lineup, particularly against a lowly Philadelphia 76ers team, and just have some fun. But stepping up in class, you do need all of your starters there. But there's no excuses coming from a Boston side. They were favored, they're at home, and they lost that basketball game. But more importantly for me, this is one of those games, and I understand, like Oklahoma City in their locker room, 54-12 at this point. Even if they lost that game, like, it's not season's over. Like, we're not buying into that. But I just felt like the narrative in the NBA starts to change. The same way we take a look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, Ben, all season long. Yeah, it's nice what they did through the first 25 games.
Right.
Yeah, it's okay through 50. And they go, oh, wait a second. They might be absolutely legit. This is one of those games for the Thunder that tells me, yes, even though they're 54-12, they are legit. File this one away where if they meet up in the NBA Finals, like, yeah, the Celtics took care of them in the regular season. They'll do the same thing in extras here, or let's just say in the playoffs. Love that win for Oklahoma City Thunder. I thought it would happen, and it did. That's impressive there. That's one that you can look forward to down the line and say, hey, we're here to play. Our record isn't a fallacy.
And we will talk about the odds in just a moment. But, Donnie, in both of the matchups between the Celtics and the Thunder this year, it has been OKC taking care of business. Oklahoma City booked as an underdog in only 3 games this year, including last night in Beantown. Their season opener against Denver, they won outright. The game after their initial matchup against the Celtics back on January 5th, a few days later on the road in Cleveland, they did not win. They did not cover against the Cavaliers. So when they are booked as a dog, again, it is about proving the expectation incorrect. OKC did that, winning outright as a dog. 2-1 straight up, of course, against the spread. And yes, Boston is not the top team in the Eastern Conference. The Cleveland Cavaliers continue to win. They have won 15 straight games. But the Celtics did enter last night, winners of 5 in a row, 11 of their last 13, looking the ilk once again of that NBA champion, of that NBA frontrunner. And Boston still is. But for OKC in that atmosphere, to go into Boston and win like that, led by 34 from your MVP favorite, that's exactly what you could hope for if you're Mark Dagnall and Oklahoma City at this moment. And Donnie, one of the big things from last night's performance, the Celtics were in front, a plus 180 favorite to win their second consecutive Larry O'Brien trophy. OKC only 20 cents back at a 2-1 price. Now, the same exact number. We expect this to be the NBA Finals series that we have. We have thought that was going to be the case basically all year long since the middle of November, maybe early December, and that is still the odds expectation. Both teams, hefty minus money favorites already to win their conference crown, and both now at a plus 185 number to win an NBA championship this year.
It's good. So many times we talk about the NBA graded differently in the regular season than they are in the playoffs and or in the championship rounds. Like, oh, don't worry, they'll be there. So if we use that factor last night, there's very few games in the regular season that Boston goes, okay, put this one down, circle it. We're going to handle our business and show the people we're still the top dogs. That was one of those games last night. And that's why you're seeing that fluctuation in market conditions where more and more people now, and rightfully so, should be buying into the Thunder as opposed to that wait and see approach. It's always going to be the Celtics. The Celtics have lost 19 times this season. The Celtics aren't saying, hey, we only lost 3 times and 2 of those were in overtime and 1 was on a last second shot that beat us here. 19 losses, 23-12 at home. They are not invincible at this point, and it's good to see the Thunder go on the road at 25-7 saying, if it does come down to this, we're going to have home field advantage, or home court advantage, I should say, in the NBA Finals. But if we need to win a game or 2 on your home court, yeah, we can do that. So let's file this one away and keep that up. But I agree. The changing of the numbers later in the season, I love to see it because more and more people are buying into, yes, we know Boston is really good, but so are the Cavaliers and so are the Thunder. Equal playing field.
And that is, for sure, DRS, I apologize cutting you off right there, but that is the difference as well between these two teams. Oklahoma City, courtesy of the road win last night in Boston, has clinched their playoff spot. Boston has not as of this moment, but even beyond that, Oklahoma City, 12-game advantage for the number 1 seed in the Western Conference with only 16 games remaining, only a matter of time before they clinch that 1 seed out west. And the Celtics still, despite being the short favorites all year, and maybe, if you want to call it faltering on that expectation for a postseason price, I'll allow it. But the fact is, Boston is not the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They're 8.5 games behind the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Celtics will not have home floor advantage throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs like Oklahoma City will. If it was to be this NBA Finals matchup, who would have home floor advantage? That would be the Thunder, who has taken both of the games against the Celtics throughout this regular season. A lot of playoff positioning to figure out down the stretch run of this NBA campaign. And Donnie, the Minnesota Timberwolves are making a charge trying to get out of play-in tourney position, make it 6 straight wins for the T-Wolves after last night's resounding 20-point victory on the road in Denver, 115-95. The T-Wolves win outright as a 3-point road underdog, make it 6 straight once again for Minnesota.
Yeah, Rudy Gobert back in that lineup there certainly makes a difference at center. And what game do you want to have him in there to try to guard, let's just say, Nikola Jokic? That helps out. But I didn't see this coming yesterday. I thought the Denver Nuggets at home in elevation, the difference would be that. And in the second half, third quarter, 32-27, Minnesota. Fourth quarter, 26-20, Minnesota. That's not supposed to happen in Denver. That's a tough look there. 42-24 now in the season, where the Timberwolves coming into the year, based on what we saw last year, what those expectations would be. Karl Anthony Towns out of town, insert Julius Randle. Randle goes for 25, last night at a plus 17. Maybe they're starting to round in the form at this point here, and maybe some question marks more start to pop up on the Denver Nuggets side.
34 points, 8 boards for Nikola Jokic, but only 4 dimes by his successful standards. Kind of an off night. Anthony Edwards has 29 points. Minnesota still right now in the 7th spot, but they are, based on win percentage, just a couple of points behind Golden State. But really, it's the same record. Minnesota 1 more win, but 1 more loss, as they have played 2 more games than that of Golden State. So a big, big victory for the T-Wolves. We'll hit on this game on the other side. We'll talk some more NBA action as well before we dive into the 3 tickets that were punched in the NCAA tournament last night. In Houston, the Suns were looking for an upset win over the Rockets. Didn't happen. The Rockets hold off Phoenix in a scrappy night. Couple of the big boys, fisticuffs. More of that next on the Early Line.
Play a little game of true or false, fantasy or reality is what we used to call it. But instead, we're going to play a little game of buy or sell. Rafael Devers had a press conference and basically said, I ain't moving off third base. I'm a third baseman. I won't play DH. I won't play anywhere else. Alex Bregman was just signed, so how's this going to work out? Buy or sell, George? Devers will start more games at third than Bregman this season. Is that a buy or sell?
Yeah, Devers is a horrific third baseman. All right, he's bad. I think he ranks dead last in the league here. I think Cora is going to talk to Devers. Apparently, they are close. He said, listen, you got to move, buddy. I'm sorry. You got to move. We're a better team with Bregman at third.
I think he's dug in here, man. I don't know. I know that there was a report a few days ago that they were talking about it and, sort of working things out. But I think in the end, cooler heads will prevail. But I don't know when that's going to be. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to say that Devers starts like 90 games at third base this season. And I think that'll probably be the compromise here. I think that Bregman will start some. Devers will start some. Bregman's still a Gold Glove third baseman at this stage of his career. It doesn't really add up. The other thing that happened is over the course of Big Papi's career, he moved off first base. He went to DH. And Big Papi was Devers, right? I mean, pretty similar in stature there. But Devers just seems to be really dug in on this. I think if it was going to happen, George, we would know by now. And it hasn't. We just heard that it may. So I am going to buy. I don't think Devers plays 150 at third base or even 140 or anything like that. But I do think he plays more than Bregman at third. I think that they have a compromise when they play both.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Last night in Houston, the Rockets hosting the Phoenix Suns, an important game in the Western Conference standings. For Houston, their playoff positioning atop the Western Conference, or near the top, at least, of the Western Conference. The Suns trying to stack up a few wins to maybe be a play-in tourney team when all is said and done. And Donnie, these are the games for Phoenix where maybe they have to steal one as a 4.5-point road underdog. Not quite. Houston now has won 4 consecutive games with a 111-104 victory. The Rockets covering as a 4.5-point home favorite in a game that featured a really big fight between Steven Adams and Mason Plumlee for Phoenix. After that, Jalen Green leads Houston to that 7-point win. The Rockets hold off Phoenix, and we're only a matter of a few days, a few games from really maybe burying the hatchet in this Suns season.
Yeah, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Like yesterday at the end of a segment, what do you think about this Houston Rockets-Phoenix Suns game? There's no X's and O's. It's like sooner or later Phoenix is going to implode, and it probably will be tonight. Give me the Houston Rockets. And it was 111-104 final, and there are no excuses. Man, we just didn't have Kevin Durant missed 62 games this year, and Devin Booker never could get it go, and Bradley Beal was in and out of the lineup. Durant, Beal, Booker. It seems like every single night now, and it doesn't even really make a difference. 19 points for Kevin Durant. Efficient, by the way, 8 of 12 from the floor, 7 of 15 for Booker, 9 of 14 for Bradley Beal. But the surrounding cast, hey, Royce O'Neal in the starting lineup playing 28 minutes, 2 points at this point. The bench doesn't come up big. Now, I understand some of the bench was missing in that game like Grayson Allen, but for me, it doesn't work. And if you're Phoenix's ownership, you now understand, like, we didn't even try to hide late in the season. Like, you know what? I don't think this is our season. Let's just rest these guys like other teams are trying to do, all of the Philadelphia 76ers, as they got buried by the Raptors. They actually put their best foot forward here, Ben, over the final few weeks and going, let's see if we can actually make a run. Not even into the playoffs, but can we sneak into the 10th seed with these Hall of Fame type superstars on our team? It's embarrassing for the Suns at this point. I don't know when they shut it down or if they care to, but it doesn't matter if they play or not. They still stink.
And DRS, all those guys playing 30-plus minutes last night, everybody scoring in double figures and still not able to escape even with a cover. The Suns just 4-8 outright since the All-Star break, but they had covered in 6 of their last 8 games for a team that for a large majority of this year was the worst cover team in the NBA, at least looking more competitive. And they have covered in 4 of their last 6 as an underdog. But at a certain point, covering in competitive basketball only means so much. Yeah. You got to start stacking up wins. Still 2.5 games behind the Dallas Mavericks, who are trying their darndest to allow the Phoenix Suns an opportunity to be a play-in tournament team. It would be understandable if the Mavericks missed out on any postseason competition, given the year Dallas has had. Not necessarily the same grace for Phoenix at this moment. A wild ending last night, by the way, up in the Rose City. The Knicks continue their road trip against Portland in overtime. Mikal Bridges, a buzzer-beating 3, and some great work by our stat man and producer extraordinaire, Joe Frizo. The New York Knicks win by 1, Donnie. 114-113. The Trailblazers, a 3.5-point home dog. They do cover. The game featured 42 league changes. Since the data has been available since 1996, those 42 lead changes, the second most we have ever seen in an NBA game.
That's pretty impressive here, which means it was neck and neck entire way. Nobody really going on runs at that point and finally hanging in there. And that's not even a great Portland Trailblazers team. And we know you're missing some key compartments here on the New York Knicks starting lineup like Jalen Brunson. But a good win. Any win on the road in the NBA when you're jockeying for position is a good win. I don't think anybody's going to look at that like, oh, man, the Knicks got really lucky. Like, no, you'll take that win and move forward. A win is a win.
Yes, it certainly is, especially on this road trip and even magnified by the absence of Jalen Brunson. All right, let's get to conference tournament week in men's college basketball. 3 tickets to the big dance punch last night. Let's start with the latest one that we saw out in Big Sky Country. A matchup of the 2 top seeds in that conference tourney. The 1 seed Northern Colorado, a 2.5-point favorite for that tournament final against the 2 seed Montana. In the Grizz, pull off the upset, winning outright as a 2.5-point dog, 91-83, high-scoring affair, sailing over a total of 146.5. The Bears of Northern Colorado who I had a ticket on, were hoping for their first NCAA tournament since 2011. Montana has been there more recently. They are back in the big dance for the first time since 2019.
Yeah, nice win yesterday. And also contrast that to the NBA where the Celtics shoot like 60 triples a night. Look at the efficiency. Montana scored 91 points, Ben, 7 of 11 from three-point range, 64%. That means we're not hunting the three-point shot. If you let us shoot it, we'll send that dagger home. Did you see the shooting percentages, though, overall for the teams? Like, you shoot I don't know if is that hard? Like 46 shot attempts. They made 65% of those field goal attempts, which again included 64% from three-point range. And then the free throws, 24 of 28. I don't know if I've seen a more efficient game at a high level, meaning this win and in to get into the championship round, March Madness. 65%, 64%, 86%. Go ahead, Montana. Get it in. Let's go.
Listen, I was going to target Northern Colorado maybe in a 3-14 matchup, opening round of the NCAA tournament. A hat tip to Montana. They will be the team out of the Big Sky that I think might be able to make a little bit of noise with an opening round of 64 upset. Let's move on to the Patriot League. American, in front of its home crowd last night in the nation's capital, holds off Navy. The Eagles back into the big dance for the first time in more than a decade since 2014. AU covering as a 3.5-point home favorite. They beat the Naval Academy. American and Navy out of the Patriot League in that tournament title game. American picks up a big victory. They are dancing once more.
Yeah, good stuff out of that, too, because these are the teams that you don't normally pay attention to. And once you get to March Madness, they line them up as like a 15 or a 16 and quickly get bounced out of the tournament. So understand this. That was their championship game, and what a performance it was to win that by 24 points. And also, being efficient from the three-point line. They hoisted 25 of them. Talking about American, made 11 for 44%. That's the way you do it here. 4 for 20 for Navy. That's where it is. Live and die by the three-point line. American moves on. They survived.
The Eagles flying to the big dance. Matt Rogers, the star for AU last night, 25 points. More college basketball scores next.
The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of
18.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Rounding out this opening hour with a recap of what happened on a jam-packed Wednesday, 40 Division I men's college basketball games and 3 spots in the NCAA tournament up for grabs here on this Thursday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. So the first 2 of those 3 tickets punched out of the Big Sky. That would be Montana in a slight upset in their tournament title game over Northern Colorado. American University, 3.5-point favorite against Navy, wins by 22 on its own home floor, getting revenge against the midshipmen. They had lost both of the regular season matchups against the Naval Academy. They're dancing for the first time in more than a decade. And in 2 years, DRS, at McNeese, Will Wade just keeps on winning. The Cowboys are going back to the NCAA tournament for a second straight year, knocking off Lamar last night in that Southland Conference tournament title game. Will Wade, a Division I head coach for 11 seasons now, has made 7 NCAA tournament appearances with 3 different programs, has won 4 regular season championships in 3 different conferences with 3 different schools, including back-to-back years with those Pokes at McNeese. The Cowboys are dancing once more.
Yeah, the best part about it is he'll be up in that high major conversation sooner than later, because even though he cheated on his way to the top, people just want to see results and victories, and that's exactly what Will Wade gives you here. McNeese, the best team on offense and defense in conference play in the Southland, and they didn't even need their offense because they just played great defense, held Lamar to 5 of 23 from the three-point line, 30 total percent as a team from the floor, and also on offense themselves. Look, you shoot 3 of 17 from three-point range, 17%. You probably get beat by decent opponents, but that's how efficient McNeese State is on defense, where if your offense isn't there all night, you can always rely on the defense. This will be a fun team to watch. And also keep in mind, probably, when you see Selection Sunday action and you're breaking it all down on the SportsGrid network, McNeese is going to be one of those teams that even the national outlets are going to start saying, like, there's a legitimate chance they can win a game or 2 if they stay hot. Get ready for that one.
11 consecutive wins for McNeese at this moment. DRS last year thought of as a team that would do the same. A very intriguing 5-12 matchup against Gonzaga. They got routed by 20-plus points, hoping to change that narrative this time around. And if you think, hey, they only won their conference championship game where they were a minus 550 favorite to take home the tournament title by 9 as a 13.5-point favorite against Lamar, McNeese played 22 Southland games this year. They won 21. They were booked as at least a 9-point favorite in all 22 games. They were expected to be dominant in their conference, and they turned out to be exactly that. Other scores from around a Wednesday in college basketball: a wild ending in regulation leads to OT, and Donnie in the SWAC, Grambling pulls off a monumental upset. Grambling knocks off the 1 seed in the conference tournament in Southern, 65-62 in OT.
Yeah, ugly game there, but yes, you see this happen. A 15-3 team in conference play gets knocked off because why? It's not a best of 3. It's not a best of 5. It's not home court advantage for the most part here. You're looking to take advantage of a team that you just need to get hot for 1 game, and Grambling pulls off the upset.
Liberty, the top team in CUSA, hold and serve against UTEP with that big win yesterday. And at the high major level, DRS, the opening rounds of the Big Ten, SEC, and Big East tournament, Texas, an intriguing win for its NCAA tournament hopes, sending Vandy home quickly from the SEC tourney. Same story perhaps for Oklahoma, knocking off Georgia. Arkansas led by a lot in the second half against South Carolina. Things got dicey down the stretch, but the Hogs should be in the NCAA tournament holding off South Carolina. Villanova sets up a matchup against UConn today inside Madison Square Garden, and Seton Hall's disastrous season comes to a close.
Yeah, and you're taking a look at, you want to have that resume ready to go because it's still a blank slate at this point. Just keep adding quad 1 victories and big victories. You don't want to lose at this time like teams like Ohio State getting bad losses at the wrong time on the opposite side of the bubble. So many teams to talk about and so much fun because, again, these are tournament games. These are kids playing these games at neutral sites with so much on the line. You never know how either side is going to react, and it's fun to see the upsets. And also, more importantly, it's fun to see a team that was left for dead start to build that resume once again to try to get into March Madness.
Donnie mentioned Ohio State, so let's show you the score. Iowa pulls off a huge upset in the opening round in Indy in the Big Ten tournament. The Buckeyes seemingly were in. Now they might be out. A very long 4-day window to see their fate on Selection Sunday. Kansas in its Big 12 opener, surviving in OT. Very exciting times. Hour number 2 up next.